All right, I have 5 o'clock. We're gonna call the meeting to order. And we are starting with our CSIP presentations this afternoon, almost that evening. And I'm going to Donna first. Hi, Donna.
Great. So thank you. Thanks for inviting us in tonight. As you know, these people are all looking very relaxed because school is out for the summer. So they have 1 week before they start summer school and then they're ready to go. So this is our third presentation to the board. The first was just to go over the goals for the year. The second was our mid-year check. And the third tonight is to talk about just some of the exciting things that have happened this year and wrap this calendar year up. So we finished our SB8 testing, but we do not have all of our SB8 data in, and the state does not release their data until the 15th of August. So come August, we'll have a nice presentation for you with all of the data. And it's important, I think, that we wait for state data because numbers don't mean anything until you have something to contextualize them with. So we'll have that information ready to go for August. And with that, I'm going to introduce the first panelist. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Lopez, the acting principal out of Hurdle for the last 4 months, and thanks for having us back. We're excited. So I'll just jump right in. Tracy, are you going to pull our thumbs up? I will only need it once, I'll let you know. So our first celebration tonight encompasses building changes that were designed to help us meet the anticipated needs of our learners during their first full year back. At the end of the last school year, we shared with staff some 21-22 year initiatives, and these were a combination of requirements of the Washington State reopening of school plan, the OSPI's menu of best practices, and extensions of things that we have already been doing at Grable. So they included common student growth goals, utilizing building-wide assessments and professional learning communities, or PLCs, as we call them. They had daily tier time where students moved between classes at their grade level to work on specific skills, daily small group writing instruction, daily small group reading instruction, and bi-weekly literacy meetings with our instructional coaches who oversee our tier 2 reading intervention programs. These initiatives were instrumental in helping students make up for missed learning opportunities during the pandemic. They gave our newly formed PLCs common data points right from the start, as well as an avenue for teachers to provide skill-specific instruction at each student's level. We worked hard as a building to establish these systems this year and will continue to grow them moving forward. So we celebrate that. So we were prompted to share 3 celebrations with you tonight. And in elementary school, we are nothing if not creative. So buckle up as I share several data points under the celebration umbrella called growth. When we look at student data, we look at many sources and obviously all angles. We know that student learning was impacted by reduced learning opportunities during the pandemic, which makes it harder for students to reach typical benchmarks. So we focused on filling gaps this year. In the area of math, we are celebrating that in 9 months of school this year, our first graders averaged 12.8 months of growth. Our second graders averaged 9.7 months of growth. Third grade, 11.4 months of growth. Fourth grade, 12.2 months of growth. And our fifth graders, headed to you, Mark and Candace, 14.6 months of growth. Tracy, if you want to go to page 10, we can look at our Acadians reading data. As a classroom teacher, I spent countless hours poring over the student data, and as an administrator, that has not changed. It maybe got worse. And so one of the biggest lessons that I've learned about data is that there's more than meets the eye. If you, for example, if you take a look at our second grade Acadians reading data on the far right, it shows a fall score of 69% and a spring score of 67%. Read as such, it gets your heart beating a little quickly, but this doesn't tell the full story. Acadians testing is a moving target. The benchmark score is not the same in the fall as it is in the winter and the spring. It rises each time. What I like to do is take a look at the percentage of students who meet the end of year benchmark at the start of the year and look again at the end of the year as it's a more accurate reflection of growth. So I'd like to share with you our student growth for Acadians for the school year. Our kindergartners came in at the 0% meeting the end of year benchmark. And by the end of the year, they were at 63%. Our first grade went from 12% to 65%. Second grade, 27% to 67%. Our third grade went from 20 to 69%. Fourth grade, 29 to 66%. And lastly, our fifth grade, 28% to 78%. In the area of our panorama data, we've seen an increase from our beginning of year to end of year survey data in the area of staff sense of belonging for both classified and certificated staff. We knew that this would be a big mountain to climb this year since remote and hybrid learning left a lot of our staff feeling disconnected, and we had many staff members who were new to Gray Wolf. This year, when we came back fully, our weekly Monday morning PDMs had become monthly afternoons. So we worked to protect our PLC time during each early release. The PTA and our admin team provided lunch several times to bring people together, and we held several potlucks. In the 22-23 school year, we're looking for ways to increase these opportunities both in and out of school. As a staff, we explored an alternate schedule for the coming year that increased common planning time for grade level teams, but ultimately the staff vote showed that the ripple effects of this alternate schedule were too significant to move forward with the idea. So we're looking forward to returning to late start Mondays in the 22-23 school year, as it will give us all increased opportunities to connect with one another and continue. Our third celebration is in the area of family involvement and the increase that we've seen this school year. We held our first book fair after a 2-year break. It was ran by our librarian with the help of our PTA and lots of family volunteers. We had a family shopping night where parents could bring their kids, and when the week was done, we recorded our highest book fair sales ever. We got back to in-person PTA meetings beginning in April. Last week, more than 40 family volunteers turned out to help put on an amazing field day for students. And our fifth grade had so many family member chaperones on their end of year field trip that each chaperone was responsible for 1 or 2 students. Last Thursday, we held an in-person fifth grade moving on celebration, and well over 200 family members came to celebrate their students. It was the best. I will leave you with not a 4th celebration, but just a ray of hope for the future. Our kindergarten class is the only group of current Gray Wolf students to have a complete educational experience thus far. They've not missed months of school. They've not had to learn remotely or in a hybrid model. Their experience this year reflects the growth and progress that Gray Wolf students make when they work with and learn from our tremendous staff for a full year. 90% of our kindergarten students met the end of year standard in phoneme segmentation fluency. That's the ability to break words down to individual parts, and it's a foundational skill for learning to read and write. We're super excited about this tremendous growth. 84% of our kindergarten students met their growth goal in iReady math, and 100% met it in iReady reading. So our school is a school of grit and hope. While this year was a year of perseverance and grit to help close gaps for students in 1st through 5th grade, our growth data and this kindergarten class give us hope for the future that's worth celebrating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have about 5 minutes slated for questions, so.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Do we have, is Pat online?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yep,
Will you
she's
just let me
there.
know if she had any questions?
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much.
Great job.
Hello.
I do want to just take a minute to introduce myself again. My name is Christy Queen, and I'm the principal at Helen Haller Elementary. I've been a building administrator since 2007. I've worked as an administrator in Shoreline and Mukilteo, and this is my 4th year serving as a building administrator in SWIM. It was an honor, and I was thrilled over the moon to be hired by a committee and Dr. Prine to serve as the principal at Helen Haller Elementary and hire my best teammate, Sarah Decker. Sarah has been in education for 16 years, 7 of them as a classroom teacher, and this is her 1st year as a building administrator. What we are most excited about is continuing the great work that we started at Helen Haller this year into next year and hopefully beyond. One thing that we noticed as a learning curve, and as well as the nation and the globe, that coming back after 18 months of disruption was challenging. We knew we were going to see big behaviors. What we didn't know was how violent some of the behaviors that we were going to see were, or how long de-escalating, or how long extinguishing undesired behaviors would take. I do know one thing for sure, this year has cemented, but I've always believed as a lifelong educator and reaffirmed that public school is for all children. All children can learn and succeed at high levels. We knew coming in that we wanted to model a soft reentry, and we knew we were going to meet students where they were, whether it was in their reading, writing, math, or with their behaviors. We practiced a reaffirm and reset of our PBIS practices, our 5-to-1 positive greeting at the door. And we wanted to increase our sense of belonging and hit refresh on 2 new restorative practices, class meetings and circles. We saw tremendous growth in all areas, and Sarah's going to share a little bit of our iReady data.
So, thanks, Sarah. And what we, piggybacking off of what Jen said, our kids, the learning curve, our kids came to us different than they had been in the past. And so we're focusing on growth this year, growth towards personal growth, right? So our iReady data was tremendous. When we look at the kids, where they began and where they finished, we don't have extreme numbers of kids on grade level, but that's not what I'm concerned about. Really and truly, this was a year of growth, and so I want to celebrate the growth in the different areas. Our kindergartner students came in, 21% of them were at reading level, and by the end of the year, there were 74% of our kindergartners who were on level for reading. We had 13% of our first graders at reading level. By the end of the year, that was 45%. The first graders went from 22% of the students being 2 or more grade levels below reading, so coming in at a pre-K reading level. We dropped that to 8%. So we took 14% of those kids from pre-K out of that into first grade level. We had also tremendous growth in our 3rd grade band. We took 14% of students end of the year 2 grades below, where we had almost 60% at the beginning of the year. Let's see, 5th grade started with 30% of our kids being on grade level for math, and at the end of the year we had 59% of our kids on grade level. iReady is a dipstick measurement, and it doesn't show the actual growth of the individual students like I wish it could. If I was to show you these kids and their faces and where they came at the beginning of the year and where they are now, numbers are a point, but those faces and the excitement that they have at the end of the year coming in and reading to me and being able to show me their math facts, that's what it's all about, is the growth in confidence towards learning. That was our priority this year, and I feel like we really met that.
Additional highlights are even though it was tough, and we talked last time about the change theory about forming, storming, and norming. We considered our reviewing as a staff our panorama data over the winter a highlight, because what it did was cause us to pause and reflect And we revisited our co-created agreements that we had established in the fall. And we talked about where we needed to monitor and adjust those agreements and who we wanted to be as a building and who we wanted to be as a staff. We dug deep into the Washington State discipline laws, which are encouraging us to try everything before imposing any kind of class or school exclusion. And I am thrilled to say at the spring measure, we were at 70% of our staff felt a strong sense of belonging. This work, that survey also led us to reinvent our discipline flow chart, going through building council, our MTSS team, as well as the whole staff and back. We're focused on prevention and trauma-informed responses at Helen Haller. We also had a math committee that met once a month, and they visioned and are now implementing a math intervention program next year. This grew from the success of our 95% model. We've also purchased Eureka Equip and will be training our staff in the fall. Our final celebration is similar to Gray Wolves. We are very excited to re-engage with our families starting right back in the fall. Sarah and I attended a conference and one of the presenters said, "Oh, I'm sure your parents are so much more involved this year than they have been in the past." And I thought that didn't ring true for us because COVID felt like, first it was all at home, then it was a hybrid, then it was kids are back full time, but parents can't come in. So we felt there were mixed message in that. So we're so excited to focus on State Criterion 7, parent engagement. This year we had a successful Winter Wonderland, an Earth Day run, and an ice cream social that were all done in partnership with our PTO. And next year we're going to dig a little deeper into parent engagement and really teach them where their child is in the scope and sequence and in relation to standards. And we want to know everyone in our community by name, strength, and need. Thank you.
Any questions? I do have a couple questions. Eureka Equip, can you tell me what that is?
So we use Eureka as our math curriculum, and Eureka Equip is the extension off of that provides progress monitoring and more aligned with what the iReady program does as far as that progress monitoring and being able to meet kids where they are at individually. It's our effort to differentiate for our kids with iReady going away. This is just going to be another way that we can make sure that our kids are getting differentiated just right instruction.
Okay, great.
Tier 2, 3 now.
Okay, excellent. And then my other question, and I don't know if this was common practice necessarily pre-COVID, but I'm thinking of the elementary, even particularly in the younger grades. Speaking as elementary, we would regularly have parents come in just to help out on a regular basis. And so my assumption is you probably didn't have that for the majority of the year. And I don't get me wrong, I appreciate the engagement events and that type of thing, but is that something that is also going to be coming back? And I
Yes,
imagine
that is one of our big goals, especially as we continue to really build a robust MTSS framework.
Mhm.
We're going to need more helpers in that.
Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you very much. Director Stock.
As we didn't allow the volunteers on until after your last presentation, actually. So that was a lot to get rolling out. So thank you.
Yeah.
Your PTA is, we always see all the work that along with great work, but I know several other ones from on Haller, those are in my neighborhoods.
They rock.
They're phenomenal.
Now they're moving on to middle school. So,
We had a couple though.
Director Alderson, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a question about looking at the panorama results of, it sounds like you're very much addressing student issues with COVID and that sort of adjustment and feeling connected to the school and making progress, academic progress during the year. My question is, what about faculty? you know, because clearly that's a concern too, and it always has been this year, just the burnout and the stress of the year.
I'm so glad you brought
Have
that
you
up.
guys been thinking about how to,
Oh, we
build
sure
that?
have. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because we know right now we're facing a teaching shortage. We know teachers are leaving because they don't feel supported. They feel that gossip and slander on social media can really end a career. And so we're really focused on making sure all of our staff members feel 100% safe and supported. And then the 3 levels, we're doing a book study called Onward. Mr. Harris, are you going to talk about Onward?
Briefly.
Okay, I'm going to let Mr. Harris talk about Onward, but we're very excited to do this work in partnership
with the middle school?
and grade level.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hello. Since we're introducing ourselves, I'm Vince. It's as if we all got together and planned this out, but we haven't, because I have felt similar themes as well. So the themes for OPA's celebration are around the idea of growth, around the idea of re-engagement, and a renewed sense of hope for all of our students, really, in the whole community. So I'll start with celebrations and growth. I'll talk first about our students. So Tracy, if you want to go to some of the SBA scores, that'd be great. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. So really want to celebrate OPA's staff and our students. OPA, we are near, at, or above the state average in every testing category. So that's absolutely tremendous. So okay, staff, there you go. That's all the barriers we've had the last few years. Just a couple of highlight examples from iReady. Here's an example in 3rd grade math. Our fall scores were 33% of our students performing at grade level, and the spring score, 72% of those kids performing at grade level. So that's tremendous as well. Applause. Grade reading example, 40% were at the fall, and at the fall or at the spring, it was 86%. So absolutely tremendous. Yes, please do. I want to talk about goals for just a minute. Some of the goals we set out to do this last fall and that we worked toward all throughout the school year. One of them was to develop and implement a literacy intervention system, a data management system, and we implemented Acadience into our intervention system. So we took existing iReady data and Acadience data, and that's what led was a big part of our LAP intervention program for our students. And we have one staff member who really drives that. Her name is Michelle Canepa. She does an amazing job of meeting students where they are and developing programs that serve them individually based on where they need to grow. And she does a tremendous job with that, and she impacts our entire school. So way to go, Michelle. Next, I want to talk about is a little bit about staff. And over the last couple of years, we took a deep dive into the Dare to Lead book and Habits of the Mind. And from that work, we really built a foundation for kind of our collective shared values and where we're heading to as a learning community, created this common language, and I think this bond for us. And from that, we had a lot of really critical conversations, and some great programs came out. And so for the very first time, OPA has a middle level leadership program and leadership course that's taking place. We developed a mentoring program. And it enabled us to kind of regroup and renew as a learning community when we've been so separated for the last few years. So in the dark days of the winter, as springtime came and the hope of masks were going to be renewed, we put together a Welcome Back Otter themed event for our families. And it was a blast. We actually got up and sang to our own lyrics, the Welcome Back Otter song, led by one most talented Sarah Benjamin. And it was just wonderful to feel the energy and the renewed spirit of having kids and families back on campus. And it was an absolute blast. And that led to later on in the springtime to 2 amazing drama performances by our students and some of our staff members that support that program, where hundreds of families were able to attend. So at the end, when I think about OPA over this last school year, growth for our students, re-engagement with our staff and families, and hope was all throughout the school year. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Vince, is the data here, is it just on OPA? Do we have anything on for DVS at all, or?
We do not.
Okay. Do they have like, don't they get state testing
Yes, they
as
do.
well?
Yeah, you want me to explain to you why you're not seeing DBS as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so in the fall, when we were putting plans together for the both OPA and DBS, Dr. Pine and I decided because DBS was brand new and they didn't have a year's worth of data, it just didn't make sense to put their data in when it would be all asterisks. They don't have any previous data.
Right.
This would have been their first year of actually taking any state assessments.
All right, great. Appreciate that. Dr. Jeff?
Yeah, I was gonna, what's enrollment in OP these days? Ballpark,
Ballpark will be bigger than we were last year.
so it's growing,
Pardon?
it's growing.
Yes, as well as DBS. Both are growing significantly.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
So for the middle school, I want to remind you where we were beginning of the year. August, Timberwolf days, kids are all on campus, masked up, we're doing pictures, we're getting parts and pieces going. But we're distributing now one-to-one devices, one to every single kid. My librarian, her family, myself and my family ended up being the people standing in the library, making sure everybody had a bag, device, and the attachments that went with, and signed the documentation. So every kid walked out of there on those days with the tools we expected to put in their hands as secondary students. That took a chunk. We were not ready for that as a district, but we were ready for that because we had to be ready. We are collecting those back and correcting some of the things that needed to be done differently. And we'll redistribute in the fall better than we did the first time around. But I got to give you some insight to the teacher. They were in the classroom, then they were online. Imagine teaching a painting class and then teaching a digital painting class. And then coming back this fall and having your class in a situation where the students expect you to do both simultaneously because they now have a device in their hands. Doesn't matter what the subject matter was in the secondary world, those are the things that our teachers had to adapt to over the last 2 years. And they've done amazing work to make that shift so that now the one-to-one device is part of what our kids expect. We do not anticipate kids walking around with luggage anymore on wheels like they used to do, or having to have a huge locker bay to put things in. Kids are gonna walk around with a bag that has a one-to-one device in it. And they'll have maybe some pens or pencils. Everything else will be in the classroom. So children will no longer have to lug around parts and pieces from point A to point B. They'll come to school to do school. That said, I'm gonna touch on a couple of pieces. First of all, what we do academics, we do behavior, and I know you know this, but we do social emotional learning. So I'm gonna start with that piece. Social emotional learning before the pandemic was something we sort of dipped our toes in. Now it's bread and butter work. It's the work we have to do to teach kids how to manage and behave themselves. As you guys know, the Castle 5 pieces of what that is for social emotional learning, that is starting to drive a lot of the choices our teachers make on a day-to-day basis. They don't just teach math or English anymore. They're also paying attention to the way they structure lessons so that kids can be prepared for social emotional situations. I got to tell you, that's one of the things that they were lacking when they came back. Middle school is a huge burst of growth for 3 years around self and how you express and how you interact with other people. And we sat there this year with 2 grade levels that missed 2 years of that behavior at the middle school level. And they really suffered for that. So for us, what do? We finally got our SEL tier 1 level work off the ground. That was Habitudes. I know some of you had a chance to look at that. It's 13 specific lesson points where there is a theme and an image, and videos are connected to movies the kids know. There's lessons, there's discussions, there's even kids who are examples of around the world who point out these traits of character that our kids can relate to. We finally got that piece up and running. Along the SEL world, we also recognize there's kids that need to learn how to do secondary school. You go from the elementary care and loving of that family environment that those 2 schools create, and now you're rotating between 6 teachers, one less every hour. They got a new person. So how do you do that? So we created success plans for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids under the mindset that we're going to try and help them do secondary school well by the time they depart us, so that when they land at the high school and every class and every credit counts, they will have made the adaptation and change. Will we hit all of them? No. We'll take that same approach of going after those kids who really need the intensity and try to shrink that list by a few kids every single year, so that by the time they come to the high school, that list will be very small indeed. So that's part of it. The other piece is for the teachers, as you mentioned. We're headed to what do we need to do? So we've had conversations about what they need to do. We've tried different things over time. Now we're going to approach it from the resiliency aspect. Onward is a book that was written by a teacher, and it's got a workbook that goes with it. And it takes the teachers to the journey that begins this month in June as they reflect and think about how the year went, all the successes, all the near misses, or are the big misses, and start to think about who they are, what their characters are, what drives their thinking and how they do teaching. And the book is laid out so that they get a separate chapter every single month. And it drives through the entire process of what it's like to go through the school year for a teacher, as it was designed by a teacher. So our 3 schools are going to walk our teachers through that process and try to help them grow the resiliency so that we can retain the good quality teachers that we've gotten our fingers on so far. We want to put our hooks in. So that's on that SEL front. On the behavior front, we took 3 new approaches. 3 new things happened this year in response to the behavior needs. First, I want to say a big praise to our assistant principals. Just to remind you, and Joan, this wasn't your responsibility, but when COVID began, our superintendent had to put a burden on assistant principals that should never have needed to be done. They made them the COVID police, in essence. They made them the enemy of staff, students, families, and communities. And those are the human beings that are supposed to build connection, supposed to build relationships with the kids who are in that 20% and above that really struggle. And our circumstances put those people in a position where they could do nothing but fail. So the fact that they are still successful, the fact that they still made a difference, speaks volumes to how well those people have done their job. And I look forward for them to try to put that mantle down and no longer have to be the COVID police and get to start to be who they really are as administrators. And maybe community will begin to appreciate what they are, what they do, and how they work with kids. But they have been put in an untenable position up to this point. I look forward to what it brings to the fall. And I just want to speak on behalf of them. So moving forward on the behavior front though, for us, we're at a place where, as Vince left the middle school behind, they had a solution center, but it was in a transition where solutions couldn't be had with the old methodology of all the changes to discipline law. So we had to unteach ourselves how to use that room and figure out what the next best step is. Well, that's about restorative practices. That's about looking at the child and understanding them from the trauma they come from, understanding the difficulties they deal with, comprehending those, and then starting to grow them from where they are to a place that they're more successful. Well, we happened to stumble across an employee who came to our ranks this fall. And as we got to know them and they felt trust to talk to us, they let us know their background was in restorative practices, just as we had a conversation for a need for a place for kids to go, sometimes as a detention space, as you might think of it, or even an in-school suspension place, but really it was about trying to restore practice with kids. And that person has taken the point where they've grabbed a hold of and recognized some of the problems of behavior in our school. They've implemented a vape curriculum for kids who end up getting in trouble for actually having vapes. If you remember, there used to be that cigarette or nicotine cessation set curriculums that were out there. Well, it's a whole different world with vapes now, but she started to do that with kids in our school setting. She also worked with the kids who have behavior issues that wouldn't necessarily flow into a success class because of their behavior issues. She works on those same social skills those kids need for success. She's got some she's identified as 6th graders that she thinks might be with her for all 3 years. But she's going to continue to grow those kids as they move forward. The next position for us that we brought on board was we transitioned one of our secretarial staff positions into a safety and security role. We didn't have one second in the middle school level. It's a big campus. It's a big interior space. There's lots of things where conflict can occur. And that set of eyes and ears knowing the kids and knowing the building is what we needed. So we created that position for the person who frankly probably was made for the position as well. So we were lucky to find that person. What's the benefit of that? They helped us shut down vandalism in bathrooms. They helped us reduce the physical conflict that occurred in transitions between classes. They also helped us with an unprecedented number of 5 separate formal threat assessments. Well, children had been excluded from school because of the danger they might impose on the school setting. It wouldn't have been for that person to have a complete picture or understanding of those circumstances. So we are grateful for that to help us identify and respond quickly to unsafe behaviors that we might have taken longer to respond to in a previous situation. The other one is a partner from ESD. We now have an SAP. Sean might refer to his, but this is somebody who, in both of our cases, we managed to find somebody who was already here, who just didn't know they were the perfect fit for this student assistant profession. What they do in their role is they start to become somebody who connects different services. Kids who have difficulties or troubles with home, school, peers, teachers, it doesn't matter. Those SAPs get to do an assessment on them and often get to recommend them to a different location or place for those supports. As we go forward from there, that person has meant that we've been able to evaluate kids instead of just excluding kids, which is what we used to do before. So I'm pleased for that part. And they've already started to build very specialized, small, intensive groups for groups of children who have commonalities that go unseen and unrecognized. The last piece is the academics I want to remind you of, and it's a very quick one, our life skills kids. We moved to an inclusion. We took them out of that self-contained space and brought them amongst the rest of the population. There's 3 points for there. There were firsts that had never happened before. We had little boys nonverbal, walk out of a classroom, turn to the teacher and say, thank you. Pretty much made the paras who'd been working with that kid for years almost fall over when they saw that first time that occurred. You've got a kid who has a connection to a video game and he has this safety blanket that are the characters of that video game who people thought would be total chaos. I watched and talked with a para who explained to me, says to her, these have to be put away because it is now for this activity. He recognizes and self-regulates when before nobody could get the child to engage. He was a runner and he was a hitter. He does neither of those things now. And our staff now have a point of recognition of how to engage with that kid. Those are kids who those families would have never perceived of those first time things that happened this year. In terms of both, I've got a copy in front of me to remind me. I'm just going to show you from a distance. These are from a kid who was in life skills. This same piece of paper would have had this child's name, address, and phone number, and that's all when they started the school year. And it would have been out of context. That same child sits in a class with age peers and now writes things that belong in content. That kid actually participates. The other one to point out is the impact on the other kids at our school. I've had a couple where students actually used to actively engage those kids or disengage with those kids because they didn't know how to interact with them. We used to refer them as Brad's kids, and they sat at a lunch table, isolated and separated from everybody else. Paras protected them. Now they're integrated with their peers in lunchtime and everywhere else. And in an English class, I have one teacher, I got a chance to see it, made me smile and cry at the same time. A student got up to one of those students' life skills and invited them to sit down, and they read to them. So they didn't have to hear the audio of the written, because they knew that reading the text, not understanding it, but reading the text was a hurdle for that kid. So other kids on our campus are benefiting from that inclusion. So I just wanted to leave you with that smile, at least for me anyway, as we wrap up here. Thank you.
I have just a couple of comments. One is I appreciate what you say about supporting teachers with SEL as well. That was what I was trying to get at earlier, and I think that's really important. I also appreciate your comments about the assistant principals. Having been raised myself with a vice principal, there was always vice principal in the school, and they were the enforcer, and that seemed to be their only job when I was growing up. So I'm glad to see this sort of addressing the value and the many faceted role of assistant principals. My question is, in looking at, the middle school, do you think there's any value? I understand there's no parent group at the middle school. And I understand part of it may be that kids just don't want their parents out, but what do you think about that?
Well, I didn't like that. How's that? I don't think, that's what I think about it. I got there and for whatever reason, I don't know all the circumstances. I'm still learning the community myself. There wasn't parent involvement. Happened to be a parent of a kid who was an 8th grader, happened to know a few parents of other 8th graders, and found a mom that was enthusiastic about wanting a thing for their kid at the end of the year. And that mom started a group of parents to make our 7th, 8th grade dance happen. So that mom gave me names. We started to build a connectivity with some folks around, and we call them the alphas, because they're the ones whose lead we will follow. And so we've at least began the inroads with some parents about the fact that I need you to come and participate with us. I need you to help drive what happens at school. We'll probably start with something nice and simple with all of our parents, which would be the equivalent of donuts for dads or muffins for moms. It'll probably be pastries for parents, but we'll move forward with trying to make them feel like they belong on our campus. As you mentioned with volunteers, we haven't had the opportunity to have them on our campus. Before my first year there, we had a couple of parents who had concerns with their kids. We invited them on campus and invited them to walk through their kids' schedule after we explained what we'd expect from them as the adult in a learning environment for other kids. We're excited to get our parents back in and start a formal parent group that will inform our decisions.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a question about the devices, one-on-one devices.
Sure.
They're turning them in. Next
Yep.
fall, I assume they'll get a device back.
They will be, yes.
Same one, refurbished, brand new.
Well, at this point, everything's being re-imaged.
Okay.
So at this point, they're all being brought in, they're being double checked. Part of what Bo's team is doing is they're checking to see what kind of damage happened in a year. Trying to figure out and best ways to address that as we move forward as a district. So we're financially responsible about that. He's putting together teams, so there'll be one here in the high school and one in the middle school, and they will serve each elementary school so that they will have a repair station to be able to be much more responsive than they were able to be this year. So that's one of the components we're putting together. But part of that reimaging is to put better tools for teachers and tools for the district in terms of governing what happens with each device and where kids go or don't go.
Okay, if I ask a roll question? Sure. How many devices are we talking about?
Just at the middle school and high school?
Yeah, you can break it down that way or total.
So the state funded the purchase of 1,476 laptops for the middle school and high school. Plus we have about 150 that we got for DBS, and then enough for the students at OPA as well. So just in those groups, close to 2,000 devices. And then as far as the ones that were either lost or damaged, we're still kind of tallying those as we go through them. Some of them were self-reported as being damaged. Some of them were turned in as being A-OK, and we're discovering are still damaged. So we're still processing to find out what the numbers will be at the end of the day.
So no summer vacation for you?
There never is.
Well, good work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening. You're going to hear a lot of the same things. It is funny, like Betty said, that the similarities, and I will tell you, not just in swim, but across the state of Washington, I'm on a principal group that probably about 35 principals from all over the state, and we had 4 meetings this year. Actually had our first back in person, and the themes that you're hearing are the exact same themes, whether you're in Seattle or Spokane or down in Vancouver or up north. It's amazing. We talk about escalated behaviors, gaps in their learning, all that kind of stuff you're seeing. It's everywhere. So ours will be the same this year. I mentioned this at the last one. Danielson 3E is demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness, and that's kind of been our theme at the high school this year, really trying to get our kids back in. I will tell you that we did a kind of a survey. I did a form survey with our staff the last week of school to kind of give me some of your positives that went this year and some of the challenges that we're looking forward to next year. And it was pretty evident that you saw a theme of getting back to a little bit of normalcy and having link crew and having a senior ball and a regular graduation. So our folks are really kind of starting to get excited about that as we move forward. So we're going to talk a little quickly about our ELA goal. Aaron is going to, I'll do our math, and then I kind of wrap up with our character strong SEL work. So Ms. Fox, and I will echo what Mark said about assistant principals and what she does.
So yeah, our ELA goal this year, we really focused on reading fluency and writing, especially grammar and conventions, and measured that through SAVAS and the My Perspectives curriculum, and then the writing through a program called Quill. So our teachers measured that multiple times throughout the year. Good news is we showed growth. We also showed growth on our tentative SBA data that's starting to come out for our 10th grade students. Right now, we're looking at about 12 to 13% above the state average, which is fantastic. A lot of perseverance for our English teachers. The one-to-one rollout was much needed, but also posed a lot of challenges, from how do we get the computers into the students' hands, to how do we teach them to use it, to how do they communicate with SAVAS and Quill and the My Perspectives curriculum. Also dealing with a lot of Wi-Fi issues here that we're excited to see some remedying on this summer, so that kids can have that stable internet access, so can access all these great programs that our English department is really excited to have and be a part of. Yeah, so props to the Sequim High School English department.
Math is the next one. I'll give them props, but it's a battle. We're seeing, actually, we're only about a percentage point below the state average on our initial SBA math stuff. I will give you one celebration in a minute in the math, which is awesome. But they really worked hard because that was the most difficult subject matter during the COVID pandemic. I mean, some of the challenging ones were like Mark was talking about, welding class. How does Kevin Phillips teach a welding class if the kids are not even in there? But as far as the academic hit, math was the one that really daily practice in math for our kids. They've seen it. And our math department, I will give huge props. They really were very intentional. And I heard it was so funny because I had the math department this year, Aaron had the language arts department. And I heard it early on in August when I started talking to them about what your student growth goal going to be this year, and every single one of them said, my goal is to meet the kids where they are right now and take them from there and not focus on the fact that there's all these gaps in their learning. And I started to hear it about the third person. I said, wait a minute. So I went to Diane, the department chair, and she said, yeah, that was our focus in August. When we started talking as a department, we really buckled down and said, okay, we're going to meet them where they are, and then we're going to kind of move forward. Their big focus this year was to align with 9th grade on-track graduation rates. That's one of the easy indicators early on to find out if a kid is on track to graduate after their 9th grade year. So they really wanted to get some deep dive into the success rate for algebra, basically algebra for our incoming freshmen, and really focusing on that and trying to build on that success. And grades are not done yet because they're not due till, I don't even remember when now. Next Friday. So we don't have second semester grades, but first semester grades, it was a 20% increase in the number of kids passing algebra from the last time we had a regular school year. So it was a very intentional effort that paid off. I did talk to them. I kind of threw something out at them last week also about, hey, what are kind of some of the focus areas for next year as far as math goes? And here's kind of what I heard. They very intentionally, again, at the end of this year, did a lot of pre-teaching about what kids are going to need when they walk into that geometry class next year or that algebra 2 class to try and get them ready for that next phase. They also, Paul and Diana, two of our outstanding teachers, are going to a Carnegie Learning Conference in July for a week that they're really excited to bring some ideas back. And they all are excited about the technology piece and utilizing a program called Mathia that's in Carnegie to kind of give them some more checks. So they know that there's some challenges, but they are definitely up for the challenge. So 2 quick celebrations in that area are, I'll do math one first. We have intentionally changed our delivery model for our kids with IEPs. It used to be a pull-out model where they would have the SDI math, which is specially designed instruction. taught by a sped teacher. And we, with the help of our amazing learning support services director and middle school did it also, trying to change the delivery model to have experts teaching our kids, experts in math and experts in English. So we've done that now. We were 8 percentage points higher than the state average for our kids with IEPs on this year's SBA. That has always been, that's how come the middle school was in kind of the issue that they were before from the math perspective. We always were below the state average in that one, but 8% higher. And the cool one on the ELA side, they were 13 percentage points higher than the state average on our kids with IEPs. The last one I'll do then is culture goal. Just like you've heard here, one of the great things that happened through COVID and kind of the work with Christy before she left was to implement Character Strong school-wide. We've always done it in pockets. We did it through leadership, but now we do it. This year we did it three days a month in homeroom was Character Strong lessons, all about SEL, not just for our kids, but for our teachers as well. And it's another place for them to build that relationship. So we really examined throughout the year our block schedule and our people wanting to do this and continue this work. And the answer when we came down to the end of it was no. So we'll be back to a regular schedule next year like we were before with the late start Monday, but we'll still be doing our homeroom, our advisory every week. And that will still be a focus of Character Strong and also building in some academic support for our kids as well. I think that's all that I have. Okay. Questions?
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Couple questions. One is, do you have you're using Character Strong throughout the high school. Is there a way of assessing its success?
Not formally, I mean, informally through some surveys. We didn't do it this year. We surveyed the heck out of our staff about it, but we never did get a chance to survey our kids, but we definitely will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other question, I was trying to find it because when I was looking at this a little earlier, there was something called, and I couldn't find it in the data now, there's something called all council monthly meeting.
Oh, yeah. So what happened with the format this year so basically this year with the block schedule, they got 2 days, Wednesdays and Thursdays were homeroom. One of those days was Character Strong, basically every day. That's funny because we would go cover it for teachers. And I remember walking into Jim Heinz's class, he's got freshmen. And I said to the class when I walked in, okay, so how often do you guys do Character Strong with Mr. Heinz? Every single time. Okay, great. So we did it. But that was the Wednesday. Then Thursday was an academic homeroom support where they could travel and get some support. But also once a month on the Thursday was the all council meetings that Sean O'Meara, our ASB advisor, led. Because what we wanted was a representation of all of our kids, not just the kids that come at 7 o'clock, the leadership kids.
So each homeroom had a rep.
Yeah.
And they went to all rep meetings.
Yeah, like the old school, when you're in the elementary school and you had the ASB and then you had 2 representatives from each classroom that met. It's kind of like that. And they actually were pretty, they were important in some of our decision-making and some of our changes that we made throughout the year in getting feedback from that group, like extending lunches a little bit, extending passing periods. That was all kind of generated from the work that group did.
Great, thank you.
Good. So I heard you say you're going back to a regular schedule. In other words, you're going to do away with the block schedule?
Yeah.
What advantages, disadvantages, did you see the block and going to regular?
Good question. I have worked in buildings before. I was at Bethel High School when they just went to a 4-period day and it was about 110 minutes or so. And the transition from a regular traditional 6-period day to a 4-period day was challenging to say the least. And what you'll find is pretty common. There's a thread. If you are a CTE teacher or any kind of lab science person, you loved it. They all loved it. But if you're a world language teacher or if you're an English teacher or even math, you have to, I kind of wish we had gone more. I mean, I wish we at least got another year just to kind of see if people get into it. We tried to give them some PD because you have to change your instructional strategies. You can't just social studies, classic social studies, in a lecture for whatever. You can't just double the time you're going to lecture. So that was challenging for some folks. But ultimately, as we surveyed the crud out of our folks and found out that that's just not the direction that they wanted to go. So we said, okay, we'll back off.
The regular schedule, how long will my biology
55
class
minutes.
be?
Our 6-period day is 55 minutes.
55, that's
Yeah,
not.
so it's not bad. It's not bad. But it is a lot, you know, setting up and breaking down a lab, it's a lot easier when you got 110 minutes. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. One thing I would like to say, and this actually doesn't relate to our CSIP at all, but while I have the team here, I did want to address one thing. That we're currently reevaluating our policy, our practice on public comments, but I appreciate that there have been in the past, and at our last meeting, there were some public comments that were made, and the board after that period, when we were making comments, we were thanking those that come and make comments. And as I reflect on that personally, I can appreciate that it would almost seem like we were sanctioning some of the comments that were made. And that is not okay. And I think we can do better as a board. And I just want to acknowledge that to everybody. And that's one of the reasons why we're revisiting that, is to look at it, take a complete look at that. So the other piece that I just want to recognize is the incredible year that this must have been from your perspective. Most of you all talked about how tough it has been for our teachers and staff, but I just want to recognize how tough it's been for all of you as an administration team. It's navigating all of the different rules that are in place, plus all the gaps, and supporting teachers. We had a change in leadership mid-year. Thank you again, John, for coming in. But I can't think of a more difficult year from all of your perspective as well. It's just an extremely challenging year. So I just commend all of you for getting to where you're at now, and being there for staff, students, everybody. So thank you very much. And with that, I think we will recess.